So I pulled it out and I go like this to basically let him smell it. And he was like, let me hold it. So I'm like, all right, bet, here. I give it to him, bro. And that was the worst mistake I ended up making, bro. You know everybody, you know my whole family.
The whole team.
Yeah.
100.
100.
Double salute. Wildlife 100.
Wildlife 100.
I've been in the trap every day, I don't get much sleep.
Wildlife 100.
Something so real, you can feel it in your knees. I need something like you, do you need someone like me?
What's moving, everybody? Hey, man, you already know what's going on, man. I'm back again with another crazy story. Hey, shout out to everybody who's been tuning in to this part series. You know, we had to do another one. You know what I'm saying? Y'all showed so much love on the first one, and you know, it's just been dope kicking it with y'all, sharing these stories and giving y'all a little insight on my life. Now, y'all can see the caption below. This is how I became the plug, part 2. This is the part 2, man. You know what I'm saying? Y'all asked for it, so I'm just here to deliver. I ain't gonna hold y'all up too long. Let's get straight into it. Hey, so where we left off at was basically my grandma ended up getting locked up for having that stuff. You know what I'm saying? When she got locked up, we ended up finding everything that she had, and we started selling at school. We started selling at school to anybody who would buy. We ended up making the school hot eventually, and they raided the school. But by then, I had already moved. Now, if y'all been watching my content, then y'all know when I moved to the north side, well, to a certain part of the north side, because that was the north side also, right? At first, I was going to Roswell. Then I moved to the Sandy Springs area and started going to a school called North Springs. Now, this is the area where I told y'all, remember I told y'all I moved into the trap. It was me, my mom, and my sister. We ended up staying with my sister's best friend, and that's where I met the Crips. That's where a lot of stuff started happening. I didn't even know this side of town was as treacherous as it was, you know, but we finna get into that because I got a bunch of stories over on this side of town. But at this point in time, we had just moved into the trap, and I just became a block boy. You know what I'm saying? I done came to the trap, and I had a little bit of what I had left from what my grandma had, you know, the hard C and the soft C and all that like that. But they wasn't really pushing that over there, over here in this trap. You know, everybody was pushing beans and green. And that's how it was, you know what I mean? So, like I told y'all in the last video, I ended up meeting one of the Crips, and he put me on with his plug. He didn't hold back on me, you know. He like they just immediately started treating me like family, which also led to me making the decision to ultimately join later on, you know. And if y'all haven't seen that, then watch that, the time I joined a gang and why. And this guy just so happened to be the plug for everybody, you know, all the Crips in that area, you know. We went over to his apartment, and he was a Haitian guy. And now that I think about it, he didn't even just have too much, but he had way more than I did. He had way more than I did, and a lot of the other block boys in the area. So, you know, we dubbed him I plug, at least until another guy ended up coming up off the block, and then we started shopping from him, you know, because he had better prices and stuff like that. But we'll get to that. So he introduced me to the plug. I go over there, and I think I might have started with like 7 grams or something. It was something real minor. You know, it wasn't much at all. You feel me? But I ended up getting a little 7 grams, and now it's like, all right, I got to figure out how to get this off. You know, I don't know anybody in this realm. I just hopped into this game, you know, as far as the green game, so I don't really know too much about it. So luckily, that same guy who introduced me to the plug, he told me, hey, I'm going to show you the ropes, right? And showing me the ropes basically meant showing me where to go and how to get it off. So I'm like, all right, bet. We stayed in a complex on the north side where that was comprised of like 2-3 other complexes, which was perfect. Remember I told y'all in my last series, I robbed the plug. When we accumulated a trap spot over there on Glenwood, it was around other apartments also. When you're around apartments, that's a good area because it's so many people out there that just willing to spend their money. You know, it's not like a secluded housing area where it's just a house here, a house there, a house there. It's tons of people that walk inside that complex every day, and it's just busy, you know. So we stayed in an apartment complex that just so happened to be around other complexes. That was perfect. Now behind this complex was a couple stores, Family Dollar being one of them. Now, if y'all don't know, I got a story on here about the time when the Crips robbed the Family Dollar. You know what I'm saying? So y'all can check that out whenever y'all got time or whatever like that. So with the Family Dollar, it's also a Citgo next to the Family Dollar, right? And that just so happened to be where everybody in the complex that I was staying in, or all the Crips, they used to post up at and get their stuff off, or at least build their clientele. Now, he took me to the Citgo one day, and I just watched. Remember, I told y'all I only had like 7 grams, right? So I just watched. We posted up at the Citgo, and it was crazy because the way it was set up, it was like it was just supposed to be like this, Like we was really standing outside on the block, like just serving folks, running to the window. Like y'all know how Jesus say, you run to the window, and first person who gets to the window, that they make that sale. But these folks had it just a little set up a little better than how Jesus was rapping about it, right? Because they didn't never fight. They didn't never run the cars, they didn't never just do certain stuff. They would just more player about it, for real, for real. One person would sit down this way, or another person would sit down this way. But like I told y'all, the block era was just about gaining your clientele, getting your clientele up. Now, he took me to the Citgo, and he just basically showed me everything, showed me the ropes. We sat in front of the Citgo. I had my little 7 grams on me. He might have had a couple ounces or something like that. And we waited for cars to pull up. When cars pulled up, they basically let you know, like, hey, y'all got something? Y'all got something? Y'all got something? And Buddy was like, yeah, what you need, what you need. He had his scale on him. He had his green, and he would do it right there in front of the Citgo. Sometimes he would, if it was a bigger amount, or if he had to break it down in a certain way or something, he'll go around the building and come back, or he would go in the store and come back or something like that. And, it was just all good. So I watched him work that block all day, fool. Like, I ain't gonna say all day, maybe about 4-5 hours he was on that block, and ended up getting everything that he brought off. He got everything off. He needed what I had, and that's how I ended up making my first little money on the block. You know what I'm saying? He sold everything he had, and the next couple plays that pulled up, they needed this and they needed that, and I didn't even have enough. That block was bunking so hard, we didn't have enough. I remember my last play, they wanted a little more than what I had left, and we told them straight up, hey, look, this all we got, so just give me that, and we got you next time, right? So also, we would also get these folk number, because the more numbers you get, the less you gotta sit on the block. That was the whole name of the game. This guy, he pretty much already had his phone book already filled. He was just showing me what was going on top of the fact that it was just off season. Like, anytime you went to the block, you was gonna get something off, because it was so many people just moving in and out of these apartment complexes that it was just always busy. It was always somebody, And Sundays used to be the most poppin'est days. The church folks, but if you can stay out there before church and after church, you was getting everything off straight up. I went out there one day on a Sunday, and I had to go back to the plug like 2, 3, 4 times, because I just kept getting everything off. Everything just kept going, On top of the fact that I wasn't just buying enough stuff either at that point. I was still on the come up. I ended up liking the block. But one day we was on the block. Well, really just me, and not the same guy. It was a couple other guys. I was standing in front of the door. One guy was standing by where the ice was, and another guy was standing on the opposite end. And the police end up riding up. Now, this was the first time I ever experienced this, right? Because that whole week, or that whole time period that I was standing out there on the block, it wasn't no issues. Wasn't no police pulling up. It just seemed too easy, bro. So when the police pulled up, they told me to come on. Now, mind you, these are Crips too. The Crips pretty much ran this little area. They had their beef with the Bloods or whatever like that, and we're going to get into that. But for the most part, they ran this little area. When the police pulled up, he had his siren on, and the the other Crips, the two guys that were standing out there with me, they like, hey, come in the store real quick. So we all walked in the store and they told me to buy something. So I ended up buying like a bag of chips or something, something small, or standing in line to buy a bag of chips. And when the police came inside of the store, they they was first off, he was mean mugging. He was mean mugging all three of us, you know. But he went to the store owner. He told the owner behind the desk, "Hey man, these folk was posted up outside of the store. Do you want me to kick them out? Or what they got going on?" And the store clerk looked at this police officer and told them, "No, they're paying customers. Leave them alone. You feel me? This is a private business or whatever, or whatever he had going on. You know what I'm saying?" And I said, "What? You feel me? It's just like that, you know?" And the police got what he got out the gas station, and he ended up leaving. He ended up leaving, and we didn't see no more police the rest of that day, bro. Straight up, it was crazy, and that was pretty much like how it was on the block that whole time. Anytime we went on the block until it got real hot, because after a while, Sandy Springs became its own city, and we gonna get into that. When they became their own city, bro, it's like they did a sweep. They came out with four-wheelers, dirt bikes. They had chargers, challenges, all type of stuff. They was chasing folks on the grass and everything. Like it was crazy. But when the police ended up leaving, I just continued my day on the block, getting my numbers. Now, when you on the block, you want to make sure your marketing is right. And it's crazy. It's crazy but real, because I learned a lot just living that life, right? You want to make sure your marketing right. Marketing right meaning you want to make sure you got some good baggies. You want to make sure you give these people a good enough amount or a little more, or whatever the case, because when you go for their number, you want these folks to call back. I done had folks where I gave them my number and they stayed on a whole nother side of town, but they'll come shop with me because I presented everything a certain way, or I gave them just that little extra that they was looking for. Because you got a lot of folks on the block that's dirty hustlers, and a lot of folks on the block that ain't. And if you just so happen to be one of them a generous hustler, then they was gonna call you. So remember, I told y'all we stayed in the trap. So we stayed right behind the Citgo in some apartment complexes, and I would go to school every single day. And the Crips, they was for me going to school. They never really had an issue with that. So and that was another reason why I kind of just took to them, because it was like, all right, that's dope. They didn't never try to talk me into skipping school or anything like that. And I thought that was kind of cool. So I started going to school at North Springs High School. Now, my first couple days at the school, I remember, and this just to give y'all a context on how people looked at these guys in the area. I remember going to school one day, and I'm just starting my classes, and I'm in science class, and this guy that looked like I think I was in like ninth grade. This guy that looked like LL Cool J came up to me one time, and he was just talking, bro. Everybody wanted to kind of talk to the new guy. I was a new kid. The girls liked me and stuff like that. So I guess he just felt like he was gonna make a friend out of me. He just started telling me all his business, and he asked me what side of town or what apartments I stayed in, and I told him what apartments I stayed in. Now, everybody know these apartments for being Crip territory in that area. So immediately he just started telling me about his whole story with the Crips. You know what I mean? This just so happened to be a guy that tried to be a gangbanger on both sides, and it just failed horribly. Now, he tried to be a blood one time, and the Bloods didn't really want him. I don't remember why exactly, but when they denied him, he went to the Crips, the people that I know. So when he went to the Crips, mind you, they really had beef back then, and in that little area, the Bloods and the Crips really had beef. So like they was trying to unalive each other, at one point in time. It was crazy, drive-bys and all. When he found out who I was affiliated with, he just ended up telling me his whole life story with these folks. like I said, he tried to join the Bloods. They wasn't having it. So after that, he decided to try to join the Crips. And the Crips already, this is a small area. You know, everybody pretty much know everybody. So they already knew that he kind of tried to get with those folks. So they set him up. They set him up, bro. They told him, man, to come to the movie theater. And when he came to the movie theater, he thought he was finna kick it with them folks, or he thought he was finna get down behind the movie theater or something like that. And they ended up jumping him. Man, they beat this boy so bad. And I know it's true because they ended up telling me this story, but not even telling me this story. I overheard them talking about this story before I even met this guy. It was just by chance that he just so happened to be in my science class when I started school over there. It was crazy. So they ended up beating this guy so bad, bro, that they left a Nike check on his face. They stumped him out and everything, bro. He showed me the scars. He showed me where he felt like his face was never gonna be the same again because of how they beat him up. It was just crazy, you know. And that's just to give y'all a little context of how these folks are, or the reputation that they had. And ever since then, he just wanted to be a pretty boy. You know, he just wanted the girls. He was like, man, forget all this gang banging stuff. Don't nobody want me. You know, it is what it is. And bro, he ended up talking my ear off that day at school, bro. And we never talked again after that for some reason. I guess he found out who I was affiliated with, and he was like, man, look, it is what it is. We probably ain't gonna be friends, you know. We ended up having class that the rest of that year, and we didn't talk no more. He didn't want to talk. And I didn't necessarily want to talk neither, you know, because he just came up to me and just was talking for no reason, you know. And I'm like, wow, you know, but it was what it was. I never just been a talkative type of person, you know. But people like talking to me for some reason, you know. Talkative people like talking to me, you know. And I ain't got nothing against that, but it's like sometimes, you know, I just don't be wanting to be bothered. You feel me? And his energy just wasn't the best. It just seemed like he wanted somebody that sat there and listened when you talk back. He just wanted to talk. So fast forward, man, maybe a couple weeks into me going to school here, people start catching wind that I was selling a little something, right? So you had students at school that would leave North Springs High School, bro, and go into the forest and go blaze. You know, they would just leave class a little early, ask for a bathroom break or something like that, and they would go out in the back by past the gym, behind the gym or something like that, and they would just blaze, bro. You know, get lifted real quick and go back to school. Didn't matter what they smelt like or anything like that. This school was really like loose like that. Straight up. It was crazy because Roswell was similar also. But and you would think that these schools being on the north side, you would think that they had different security. You would think a lot of different stuff. You know, I used to walk out of this school sometimes right out the front door and just walk to the gas station during lunch. You know, it was a sit-go or something in front of the school, and I just used to walk straight out the front, bro, and go get something for lunch and come back to school and just kick it. So one day, fast forward, bro, a couple weeks later, everybody finding out, or not everybody, but you know, the people who indulge, they finding out that I got the green. So a couple guys come up to me one day. I'll never forget, bro. They were older than me. They were upperclassmen. Remember, I'm in ninth grade. They came up to me and they like, hey, I heard you got that. So I'm like, yeah, what you need? That day, they only wanted like a gram or two, something like that. So I ended up serving them, and that was that. I felt like they had like a shaky demeanor, you know, but I wasn't 100% sure because I was new to this side of town. You know, I'm from a different side of Atlanta. You know, I wasn't really used to these north side folk. They kind of moved differently to me in the first place, you know. So the next day I come to class and they was like, hey, yeah, I like that what you had, you know, can you bring a half ounce to school the next day? So I'm like, all right, cool, I could do that. You know, just make sure you got the money. This time He was a little more aggressive. The light skinned one, it was a light skinned guy and it was a dark skinned guy. The light skinned one had braids to the back, and the dark skinned one he had a short cut. The light skinned guy, he was a little more aggressive this time. I don't know what that was about, but I ain't, his business ain't mine, so I just kind of let it fly. He was when I told him, yeah, just make sure you have your money. He was like, bro, I know what's going on. You know what I'm saying? You ain't gotta tell me. And I thought that was kind of weird, but I was like, whatever. It is what it is. So that next day, they ended up coming and they like, hey, you got that? I'm like, yeah. Mind y'all, I'm just a little petty hustler at this time. I'm just a block boy. I can't even be on the block as much as I want to because I got school, so I'm really on the block on the weekdays. You feel me? So, I ain't working with nothing but like a whole ounce or something like that. Nothing too crazy. So these folks saying they want a half a zip, that's half of all of my product. You know what I mean? And for the price that they saying they gonna pay for it, I'm like, I can't lose. So I come to school with it. I seal it up or whatever. I come to school, they meet up with me and they like, hey, you got that? I'm like, yeah, because I passed them every day after a certain period. So the period came, we passed each other. They like, yeah, you got that? I'm like, yeah. So they like, all right, meet me in the bathroom, right? It's a bathroom that's kind of secluded from everybody else. So I'm like, all right, bet. It's two of them and it's one of me. So we ended up going in the bathroom. I'm like, all right, where the money at? They was like, bro, we want to make sure it's the same stuff. Mind you, remember I told y'all he was being the light skinned one. He a little taller. He was a little taller than the brown skin one. He was being a little more aggressive this time. I ain't understand why until now. But I'm like, all right, where the money at? So he like, man, we got the money. We just want to make sure that what you got is the same stuff as what we had yesterday or the day before or whatever the case. So I'm like, yeah, it is. So I pulled it out. Me being a rookie and me dealing with actual junkies, from Roswell High School, I'm not thinking anything crazy, right? So I pulled it out and I go like this to basically let him smell it. And he was like, let me hold it. So I'm like, all right, bet. Here. I give it to him, bro. And that was the worst mistake I ended up making, bro. They start smelling it. They start playing with it and all that stuff like that. And at this point, I'm getting a little uncomfortable. And I'm starting to reach back for it. As I'm going to reach back for it, the police walks into the bathroom, bro. Y'all, you know how you got the school police, but they real police though. You got the school police. The police officer walked into the bathroom. As he walked into the bathroom, bro, these folks cuffed everything, put it in their pocket, and ran out. Ran out the bathroom, bro. Straight like that. And I'm looking at the police officer. The police officer looking at me. And he like, hey, I don't know what y'all doing in here, but you need to go. Just straight like that. You feel me? So now it's like, man, I just done gave these folks half of my worth, and these folks done got away with it. I come out the bathroom, bro, and I try to immediately try to run where I feel like they went. And I don't see these folk nowhere, bro. It's a possibility that these folk done ran out to school or anything like that. I just don't know where they at. And on top of that, I turn around and the police officer gone. So at this point, I'm like, bro, was this a setup? I don't know what just happened. All I know is these folk done got me. These folk done got me, bro. Straight up, but it didn't end there. You know what I mean? Because they ended up finding out who I dealt with, and it got real. Straight up. Remember I told y'all this side of town was run by the same people that I was aligned with. I just so happened to be aligned with these folks because I moved in they trap. These folks, this was they trap, So they kind of took it personal when they found out that I got ran off on. And man, look, if y'all want part 3, man, drop part 3 in the comments because it got real, bro. These folks just ran off with my stuff. Man, I end up having to go back. Bro, I end up having to go back to the house and tell these folks I got ran off on. They just so happen to know the folks. All I had to do was explain how they look, and they pretty much knew who ran off and all that, and it went up from there, straight like that. These folks just so happen to be connected to the Bloods and all that, so these folks were waiting. The Crips was waiting to catch these folks. You know, they ain't even know they went to this school. They had been tiptoeing around. But listen, man, we gonna get into that, man. This was like my first real exciting couple weeks as a block boy. You know, mind you, like I told y'all, I'm having to go on the block on the weekends. I'm building my clientele. I went from 7 grams to an ounce now. You know, things was getting bigger. But as soon as they start getting bigger, these folk done took me off for half a zip. And now I gotta rebuild on top of the fact I gotta get revenge. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna drop part 3 in the comments, man, and I'm gonna give y'all that. But listen, man, make sure y'all like, share, subscribe, and until next time, man, 100.